Hi, everyone. I'm your host, Jen Matthew, and in episode 31 of Timely Topics, I am joined by Mandy Major. Mandy is a recognized entrepreneur and healthcare operator. After 15 years in media, she became a certified doula, built one of the first national telehealth doula startups in the U.S., and then exited to a healthcare PE firm. In addition to a master's degree from Columbia University, Mandy is trained Scrum Master and holds a Lean Six Sigma Green Belt, expertise that has fueled her work in scaling companies, supporting strategic growth, operational development, and process improvement. She recently launched the Startup Doula to help founders build sustainable companies without burnout through one-on-one advisory services and workshops for startups, accelerators, and business schools. Let's dive in. All right, so we are here with Mandy. So excited to have you in the studio with us.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, and I felt so privileged to have the opportunity to meet you. It was probably like 6 or 7 months ago. I feel like we hit it off and have had you join one of our teaching teams for one of our programs, which I think has been so fun, a really great compliment to the work that you've done. And I think you've just instilled so much great wisdom onto the entrepreneurs so far.
Oh, that's really kind. Thank you. I've loved being a part of it. It's been fantastic.
And I think you have a really interesting story. And this season, we are focused on interviewing individuals that spend time coaching entrepreneurs, that spend a lot of time really thinking through strategies for entrepreneurs, both to develop their business, but really to develop themselves. So we're bringing in all kinds of different coaches across the board and talking to them about their strategies and the sort of things that they've learned in their lives that they've been able to instill in others. So I think you kind of fit that because you have been an entrepreneur and now you're working with them and supporting them. I just thought it kind of went all together so well. So I want to start off with, who is Mandy?
Who is Mandy? I am somebody, I always say I'm a mama. That is core to my identity, a creative, somebody who loves complex systems that need to be worked on, that need to be built or rebuilt. And I started out as a writer and then an editor, and very creative pursuit. But I feel just as creative now because it's problem solving. It's a different type of creativity. As a founder, as a coach, you're looking at, talking about big ideas and how do we make them happen, or how do we restructure them and make them better. And I think across my career from media all the way through becoming a founder and then healthcare, it's always been problem solving and creativity in some form or fashion.
I love that intro because usually when somebody asks you to tell them about themselves, they immediately go to like what they do for their job. And you immediately went to the core of your identity. So what your title is outside of work and all of the things that make you who you are. And I love, love, love creativity and building something and problem solving. It's just such a great... I think just a great kickoff to our conversation.
Podcast done. No,
yeah, mic drop. We're done now. So you mentioned media, but so you spent more than 15 years in media, and then you went through the process of becoming a certified doula, which was really interesting. Really want to dive into that. Okay. And then what was the moment or experience that pushed you to make such a dramatic pivot from one career to another?
Yeah. I've been pretty loud about this because it just became so core to my identity. I was in food media. I was in features and then in food media, and I thought I would stay there. And then I had my daughter, and she just cracked my whole world open. This is about 10 years ago, and I really thought I would stay in media. But having her open my eyes, it was like this Wizard of Oz moment to just the utter devastating lack of support and care we have for women in the healthcare system, particularly at that moment of birth where you've been so carried along through pregnancy, and then all the care and the resources go to the infant, and they have a whole course of care that's very outlined. You're going to see the pediatrician in 2 days. This is what it's going to look like. At that time, there were plenty of apps for babies, zero for mom, for that birthing person. And I just kept going like, that's it. Like, there's nothing for me physically, emotionally. It was just like, you're discharged from the hospital and told like, best of luck. You'll be seen in 6 weeks. And, meanwhile, of course it's all about the baby, but you very much feel like the husk that is just kind of left. And And I just couldn't believe that. I felt like I was one of those people who asked a million questions. I was one of the last of my friends to give birth, and I read all the books and I checked out the apps and I was like doing all the things. And it was like, this is it. And then I just kept hearing invalidated experiences, invalidated pain, unanswered questions with the new moms I was meeting in Brooklyn. And it was like, all of us were sort of like, there's nothing. It was a personal experience that became a professional mission. And I didn't know what that looked like. I had no plans to become an entrepreneur, but I just kept feeling like I can't live in this status quo. And when I went back to work, it was very fraught for many reasons. But working in food, such big egos. And it's at the end of the day, like it's acai bowls, it's chicken, it's lasagna, it's, and I had loved that job, but it felt very hollow. And for me, I just felt like those frustrating experiences, when you look across the board at the data, they were dangerous and deadly based on race and geography. We still, even now, even with a lot of inroads and measures that have changed, we have one of the worst preventable maternal mortality rates in the world. And there's so much more than that. So I felt deeply called to do something. I started my journey to become a certified postpartum doula. I didn't want to go back to school and be in the medical system. For me, it was how do I support women and parents in a more holistic way. And I didn't quite know what that would look like, but I did that. We moved to Connecticut, we moved to Connecticut. I started that process and then worked in my community, and then felt like doula work is so special and so important, but it especially at that time, this is like 2017, 2018, is there a doula in my area, and can you afford to pay for one out of pocket, because it wasn't covered by health insurance. So I wanted to address access and equity, and to me, telehealth was the way to do it. I had been in digital media long enough to kind of pretend I knew what I was doing, with technology, or at least thinking technologically. And I decided to start a company, which was, everyone was like, good luck with that. Great idea. It was a very weird idea at the time. Little did we know, by the time we launched, formally, was January 2020, pandemic hits.
Talk about perfect timing.
It was wild. It was, a lot of people went, oh, so you do have some good ideas.
Yeah.
And of course, I wouldn't have wanted the pandemic to happen, but it really accelerated the market education for telehealth, and the effectiveness of that. And then it was, but it was still the Wild West of doulas were just becoming integrated into healthcare through Medicaid. A lot of people still didn't know what they were. But I wanted to do it, and we launched D2C, direct to consumer, and over the years pivoted and then moved into B2B, working with employers as we went for the big ultimate target, which was B2B2C, to be in lockstep with the healthcare system, with payers covering. That was always I wouldn't say the first year that was my vision. I don't think I knew I was jumping off that big of a cliff. But over the first 2 years, that really became my whole focus, was to champion the integration of doula care into healthcare. And thank God for some ignorance and not knowing just how hard, everyone tells you healthcare is the hardest market. And it really is. And I'm just one of those people who's like, you told me it was really hard, so I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it. And a lot of blood, sweat, and tears later, here we are.
Yeah. It's like the ignorance in the process, because if you knew too much, you might not have ever started.
Exactly. Ignorance plus fire in your belly. It's recipe for success, I guess.
So I want to unpack so much there. I think the process of starting a business based on something you're super passionate about, first of all, career pivot into something because of such a life change into something you were so passionate about is tremendous. And it's amazing to think that you took the leap to do that, to be able to support others that are suffering and is such a big deal, and maybe a silent thing that we don't talk about so much in our society. And then seeing an idea or a problem really that you could fill with something. And then instead of doing an in-person traditional doula model, which you probably could have scaled in some sort of way, deciding to do something like telehealth. that's a huge journey, and that's a lot of learning, and in such a short period of time. And you've had so much successes along the way. What's the biggest thing that surprised you in that entire process?
That's a great question. I think how none of it is linear.
Yep.
You really think, and I now talk to other founders about this, like you have this idea and you're like, it makes so much sense. And then you want to build it in this way that makes sense. And then you have this ideal customer and you're like, your lives are going to be better if you use it. And then you have an ideal way that they're going to use it. None of that'll go according to plan.
Yeah.
And being able to lean in, like the zigs and the zags that are part of that. I liken it to a heartbeat. It's not this, it's like, and there's going to be like wins and there's going to be setbacks. But for me, I think it was just always being open to learning. And I think my early days as a journalist, I started out as a community newspaper reporter, which was like a very thankless job, but I loved it. To be inquisitive and to always ask questions and to network constantly. That all served me really well in ways that I could not have predicted. I didn't know I was going to deploy all of those skills when I was starting out because I was, I think the good thing, I was such an outsider to what became a career in healthcare that I didn't take anything for granted. I asked a lot of questions. I surrounded myself with people who knew things, like who were smarter than me, who knew more than me about technology and infrastructure as well as the healthcare system. And I asked a lot of questions and I was very grateful.
I think when you're in media, you're in journalism, you have an appreciation for narrative and storytelling. And I think an ability to be really empathetic because you are the one that's in charge of portraying or expressing someone else's story through your own words. And like that is such, I think, a challenge and probably something that's not very much appreciated by others that don't know to the extent of the pressure that is on someone to express that. So I can see how, like, in parallel, it makes sense. And we talked about coaching at the beginning of the episode, right? For those of us that are listening that are like, what is a doula? Yes. What is a postpartum doula? And like, how does that align with coaching? Like, how do you find that the similarities between those two?
Yes. So a doula is a non-medical caregiver. You can have doulas for pregnancy, for birth support, as well as postpartum. Birth and postpartum, they are their own separate trainings. Okay. You can be trained and not certified. That's a whole debate. That's worthy on a doula podcast. We could talk about, why be certified or not be certified. But really, the way I see a doula, you are there to educate and wayfind and help guide parents and really, get them off of social and off of Dr. Google and help give them some best practices and emotional support and guidance and best practices. So when I was moving into coaching, it felt like a beautiful bridge to bring all of those skill sets into business and this founder life, which can be very like cold and swaggery and just like bigger, better, faster. And we lose a lot of the human sense of it. And I think like with so a postpartum doula typically will work in the fourth trimester, the first 3 months after birth, when your infant, especially in those first few days and weeks, really first few weeks, they are 24 hours a day. I mean, they continue to be 24 hours a day. And it's like all hands on deck. It is, your whole focus is, how do I keep this tiny human alive? You're going through so much physically and emotionally. And it's a very intense time. And I think that applies to founders. We talk about, as founders, like our company's our baby. It's going to it takes up every thought in your head. You love it and it's exhausting. And that duality of both and is constantly there. So for me, with founders, I always want to center the human experience of building. And whether you're just starting out building or you are reworking something or you're shipping or you're scaling or you're embarking on a new partnership, all of those critical moments that are very intense, they're very postpartum-like in needing as much of your resources as possible. How can we talk about like the real human experience that you absolutely believe in what you're building and you love it, but you're exhausted and maybe questioning some things making questions about yourself. And this thing is so much bigger than you thought it was going to be. What am I doing? What's the next right step?
Am I going to fail? Am I
Right.
worthy? Am I
Right.
good enough?
And,
right.
and to pretend that those questions aren't part of the founder process, I think does a disservice to everyone.
Yeah.
You can be, vulnerability is strength in parenthood and in founderhood. And I want to create that safe space while we talk about process optimization and go to market and everything. But we have to be able to just say, yeah, this is really hard. This is completely worth it, but it's really hard. And now let's be solution oriented and let's work on, I love giving solutions and hopefully not advice that's not asked for. It's just like some frameworks and a way of thinking and that that support that everyone needs.
It's interesting. You hear a lot of people saying this in different ways, but like when you say like I look into the future and it's hard to tell like what path I'm going to take, but I look backwards on my life and it makes complete sense. And as you're describing your journey, it's almost like one thing led to another. It's like just a very seamless building block. It just makes sense. Like you needed each one of those experiences to lead you to the next step and almost prepare you for that next chapter. So you built Major Care. You ultimately exited, right? So was there, okay. Wow. So very recently, was there a transition period where you stayed with the company that acquired Major Care?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So and I will say it was, that's pretty fast for building and selling. And I think for me, I was, as a solo bootstrap founder, I knew acquisition was my pathway. That is what I wanted. And I went about it, I think, in a little bit of a different way than people usually do. But we were acquired by a PE firm. And then I went to work for one of its portfolio companies, Pacify Health. And I was there for just about a year and then moved on to start the Startup Doula and move into coaching. And so it was its own, I think M&A is its own conversation. Working for the acquiring company is its own conversation. All of these things, they're really, there's a lot of layers to them.
So you can go in so many different directions and I want to dive in. Like I really want to dive into some of these things that we've been talking about. So we're talking a little bit about the difficulties or the challenges that founders face when they're starting a business. And you've been really vocal about this like traditional founder culture. We talk about the negativities of social media, of what's around us. You just talked about that, especially when it comes to new parents and all the things you should and you best be doing because everyone else is doing it. Yeah. But it is also very, very difficult. I sit in a seat where I see a lot of young founders that are told what hustle culture, what entrepreneurship looks like in this grind that they have to live 24/7. And in some regards, it's a lot of work, but there's also ways around doing it that is in alignment with who you are and what you value, that it doesn't have to look the same for everybody. So what do you specifically think like that culture is misaligned? Like what do you think people get wrong about entrepreneurship?
Oh, I think there's a lot and it's changing.
We need a whole episode.
Right? Yeah, we do. And I think also it starts with like the mold of what an entrepreneur is. I think we tend to see in media and these like archetypes that it's young, it's male, it's 996 working all the time. And that's what you should have. You should live and breathe it. You're up at 4, you're having your AG greens, you're having 5 almonds, you're like running, you're a marathoner and then you're going to like crush it at work and you're right.
You get perfect 8 hours of sleep.
Right. Or you only need 4 because, right?
Like true,
because you've biohacked your way to only needing 4 and you're just like, go, go, go. And your whole team is expected to do the same.
Yeah.
And that makes me want to take a nap. Like, I just think there are moments in time as a founder that you have to push extraordinarily hard, like when you are launching, when you're shipping, when you're, these moments. But if you gun it like that all the time, you are going to burn out. You're going to burn your people out. And unless you're like truly that ultimate unicorn, which you don't know at that time, like, I don't know, like, will you have a company if you are like that? I mean, and some 996 is really happening. Silicon Valley is pushing that. But I think there's so much beyond that, and like how AI is unlocking startups now for underrepresented founders. I think that's really exciting. This could be its own podcast. Like, you don't necessarily need a technical co-founder anymore. It's not a ding. in the founder world, in the VC world, we're seeing like those red flags are changing. I love that. Like break the Y Combinator mold of it should be, it should look like this. 2 co-founders doing this, XYZ, working like this. It can be different.
How would you suggest founders balance the expectation of doing and being enough with their own value alignment, with the hustle and grind that they need to ultimately push to be able to make something successful? Like, what advice do you give them?
Yeah. I think it's going back again to early parenthood and those parallels, and kind of that nucleus of the Startup Doula is like understanding the seasons that you'll have, and figuring out, like, kind of getting a plan together. And people don't do this, right? And I only talk, like, I teach what I need to learn. I didn't learn a lot of these things, like, out of the box. Like, it was by doing it wrong.
I love that. I teach what I need to learn. That's great.
Burning out, like making mistakes, like all of that. So I never want to seem like on high, like got it all figured out. It was, there's a lot of messiness to this. But I think a little bit of planning, like knowing, okay, you're getting ready to launch, or, to do the next big thing, like I've been saying, like shipping, or getting ready to deploy a partnership of some kind, or a new product. And so what does that support plan look like? How much sleep do you need? How will you feed yourself? How will pets be taken care of? Do you have a partner having a discussion with, like, expectations around time? You're not going to be able to balance everything all the time.
Do you believe in balance?
No. I don't know if I can swear. I like to say balance is beep, but it's just it's not possible, and we keep chasing it, and it's very frustrating because you feel like if only I was better at this, then I would have balance. But there's going to be seasons where you don't get enough exercise, even though I do think you should prioritize that. There was a season I didn't and paid for it, but there's going to be times when you're not such a great partner, or you aren't a good friend. And I think understanding, like, you can't be all things to all people all the time doesn't mean be a crappy person, but I think trying to just, like, prioritize. Like, there was a phase where I was I've always been a plugged-in parent. I wasn't always a great partner. I just couldn't show up in the same ways, and I needed to put myself to bed at 8:30 at night during a period of time, and that was part of, like, how do I survive this very difficult time? All right, my sleep needs are really intense right now, so I'm not gonna do chores. I'm not, like, gonna have downtime. I'm going to put myself to bed, and I'm gonna live and breathe this company. I'm not gonna have hobbies. I'm not gonna see my friends as much as I'd like, but that's not forever. And that was just my experience. But I think for folks, it's like, just like with postpartum, thinking about who do I need in my orbit? What fills my cup? If I really need to make sure I run, okay, well, how can I structure that into the day? I've talked with founders who get up at 4, and their time is like 4 to 6. They go through all their emails, or they do their fitness routine, whatever it is, and then they're completely present for the wake up, their kids when they wake up. And then they work like hell until 4 p.m., and then they're done. And so it's just a matter of, what's your schedule and what are your support needs?
Yeah, and it's your choice. And we talked a lot about prioritization and thinking about, if you look at your calendar, it's a very good indication of what you actually prioritize and what you think is important. And it's a good moment to say, wait a second, I'm looking at my calendar, and I'm not putting in an hour for me in the morning before my family wakes up, or I'm not scheduling in that time to work out, or making sure I'm in bed by a certain time and shut off from my computer and everything else I have going on. Yeah. And you need to do that. So I think it's a good reminder that if you are trying to not balance, but you're trying to survive these moments, you have to take a step back and be strategic about the time you have. Absolutely.
And when there is downtime, really take it seriously. I think I'm a big fan of blocking time in your schedule is what's filling your cup exercise? Is it seeing a friend, like having a phone call? Is it, going to your kids' sporting activity, whatever it is? But, like, put that time on your calendar to make sure it really happens. And then, if you're If it's the weekend and investors aren't calling and like you have a Saturday, like be in that Saturday as much as you can. All the emails will wait. And if something's really bad, someone's going to slack you.
So I want to talk about this wave of success. You and I have talked about this before of hitting, and I guess it could be a wave of failure too, but you get to an ultimate endpoint and you kind of have a feeling of grief or a moment of happiness and then a decline. Like we hit this wall. Can you talk about kind of what that feels like of achieving something and then coming out the other side, and then how now, having experienced a really ultimate high, how you've maybe coached startups to navigate, or founders really, to navigate those things?
Yeah. I think a lot of founders look, we come in all different molds, but I think a lot of us tend to be type A's, type A doers. And I talk about myself like I'm sort of like a terrier. I need a job to do, or like a herding dog, right? Like
yep. I have one of those.
I need,
constantly.
I need a lot of activity, and I need to have a job to do, because if I don't, I'm going to tear up the couch. Nobody wants that.
No.
So it's a good question, and I think that's where it's like that deeply personal stuff of living beyond, like, it does become part of your identity, but trying to have some identity beyond your business. And I think that works whether your business succeeds or doesn't succeed. I was talking with somebody about exits and like not building for the exit. Like, you want to fortify the business as much as you can, but if that's the only goal, you lose the journey. And I did lose the journey in part of it. Like, there was time where it was just like, I just want that exit. Yeah. And, learning from that of like, the journey is it, not to sound all like,
no, it is.
Woo about it, but it is. And then in talking with other founders, especially like those who have exited or those who folded, there is a process. Like, there is a time of like, what next? And especially if you're not jumping into starting another business, like, what does the next look like? And I think it's a very weighty question, but trying to fortify yourself along that journey can help. And making sure, I lost friends. I have had a phase of trying to reconnect with folks, because it was like I was lost in the business. And, hopefully other people don't have that same experience, but sometimes, it was just too hard to do all the things.
We also don't give ourselves permission to be happy or content or satisfied, whatever that thing is, until we achieve a certain milestone. So I love your idea of, if we're constantly working for that end goal, that whole journey, it is wasted. You are supposed to, hopefully, spend time learning and living and loving the process regardless. And if we have our eyes set on the prize, you're looking up at something and everything else that's happening around you, you're no longer present or aware of, and you're losing a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, and losing like any kind of joy. And everything it's unpredictable. And I think centering that is so important, and just trying to be as mindful as possible. Yeah.
So unfortunately, I'd love to spend the whole rest of the day to continue to dive in. There's just so many good nuggets. And like, I sent you so many questions and I was like, I want to dive into this topic and this topic and this topic. And we need like 4 hours at least. So we have this thing that we do on the podcast, which are rapid fire questions. So every season we rotate them out, but this season we're focusing on questions related to coaching. So I'm going to share these with you. So the idea is just to kind of think like off the top of your head. You don't have to put a lot of energy into answering or thoughtful, just like off the top of your head. Ready?
Okay. I want to cheat. I want to read.
Yeah.
All right.
So as a coach, what is something you used to care about a lot in the past that you no longer think is important, and what changed?
I think I'll be honest, coming up as a writer and editor, if I could get really bent out of shape if you have typos in your pitch deck, and your pitch deck isn't like, say I'm going to coach you and you send me your pitch deck and it's a mess. that should be a teaching moment. It has now become something that I realize I can help foster a discussion about working on that. But I think that for me was like, do you not take this seriously? There was a little bit of that, if I'm being honest. So I've come to realize that is something you can always be working on. And that doesn't mean that the material in there is anything less than amazing. It's an opportunity to polish it up together.
Rory and I were just talking about something similar. Like, it's like having a stain on your shirt, right? It's like the moment you spend that extra time putting the care and like the love and the package around what it is you're building. Like, the second someone finds a typo, they're going to think, what other things are you missing in this story? What due diligence have you not done in this pitch deck or this business plan if you're willing to let something go? And like one typo is fine, but when it's like
fastidious,
throughout, it's crazy.
Throughout, exactly.
So, as a coach, what do you think is most important, motivation or discipline?
I think motivation. You can teach discipline. I think motivation. You have to keep that pilot light lit for your idea, because there's going to be, there's a ton of rejections. It's just part of it, and there's hardships and questions. But you have to have that core belief in yourself and what you're building. And if that dies, no amount of discipline is going to get that back. So we need to like really protect that. And then we can work on strategies to optimize and, be more structured or whatever it needs.
Well, this is not on my list, but where do people get motivation from? Where do you think people get motivation from?
Oh, I think some of it, the founders I meet, I feel like it's so much about how we're raised, where we come from. A lot of us have something to prove, or that motivation comes from fixing something that's deeply broken. And those are the founders I think I'm most drawn to, and I certainly want to support, especially if you're building something that's not a marketing widget. If you are really focusing on categorical problems or things that really affect people at a human level, and you are trying to create better systems and organization and solutions for them, I'm here for that.
Love that. Okay, so final one. As a coach, do you get more joy coaching the ideal player or the challenging one?
I think I'm supposed to say the challenging one, but I'm not going to. I love working with people who want it.
Yep.
If we're working together and you're like, yeah, that's a good point, and then you just don't want to hear it, let's take a pause, do something else, come back when you're more receptive.
Yeah.
Not that everything's going to be easy, but I think I love working with people who want it.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than wanting something more than that founder does about their own business, or giving them feedback and they don't integrate it. Sure, one time, but you continue to show up. It does not motivate the coach or the mentor to continue to show up every other time to put love and energy back into what you're building if you're not even going to listen.
Exactly. Be hungry for it. Yeah. Be hungry to keep iterating. It's iterate or die.
Yep. Well, thank you so much for the conversation. Thank you for joining. It was so great to have you.
Oh, it was wonderful to be here. Thank you so much.
All right.